Usually these stories start with cheating. Mine started with seating arrangements. My ex, Danielle Brooks, organized a public closure dinner at a rooftop lounge in Atlanta and told everybody it was about healing, respect, and moving on the right way. Then I walked in and saw her old boyfriend, Terrence Walker, sitting in the front row like he had VIP access to my humiliation. Her cousins had their phones out. Our mutual friends were already looking at me with careful, sympathetic eyes. Danielle dabbed at tears, smiled sadly, and started speaking like she was accepting an award. I barely said anything. I thought that silence would protect me. Before that night, Danielle and I had spent 6 years together in Decatur. We shared a lease, a Costco membership, an overused air fryer, and the kind of routines that make people assume a wedding is coming. We knew each other's favorite takeout orders, each other's work stress patterns, each other's moods from the sound of one door closing. So when she asked for separation, I didn't throw a fit. She said she needed peace, clarity, and emotional space. I believed her because I still respected her. What I didn't know was that she had already started rehearsing a cleaner, prettier version of our ending before she ever delivered it. The dinner was set up like a production. Candlelight, a private section, soft background music, name cards on the tables. Danielle stood near the bar in a cream dress and thanked everyone for showing up to witness healthy closure. People actually nodded like that made sense. Then she started talking about emotional abandonment, carrying a relationship alone, and how painful it is when someone checks out before they leave. She never used my name in any accusation. She didn't need to. Every sentence floated just close enough to me for people to connect the dots on their own. It was manipulative in a polished way, and everybody there rewarded polished pain. Terrence made it worse by never saying a word. He just leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, wearing that smug, patient expression men wear when they think they've already won something. The whole setup made one thing obvious to me immediately. This was not a private goodbye. This was a public sentencing. Danielle wanted witnesses, cameras, and emotional momentum. She wanted me either defensive or broken so the room could settle on its verdict. I knew if I interrupted her, even once, I would become the exact image she needed. So I sat there, hands folded, while she turned our separation into a performance and waited for me to give her a clip. At one point, Danielle said the loneliest feeling in the world was being abandoned while still sharing a home. Heads turned toward me instantly. That line hit me harder than anything else she said because it was upside down. She had been the distant one for months. She was the one taking late calls on the balcony, guarding her phone, disappearing for errands that somehow took hours, and suddenly curating her social media like she was preparing to look available. But if I corrected her there, in front of her hand-picked audience, I would lose. People never reward the person who argues with tears. They reward the person who looks softest under string lights. When the dinner ended, I left with nothing but a stiff smile and a quiet goodnight. I made it to the parking deck before my phone started buzzing. One mutual friend texted, "Hope you reflect on what was said." Another asked if I was okay, then added that accountability can feel ugly before it heals. That was when I understood how thoroughly Danielle had controlled the room. By the time anyone wanted details, they already had a mood, and mood was carrying more weight than facts. She had managed to make me look guilty without proving anything. All she needed was timing, a crowd, and enough performance to make silence look like confession. 3 days later, I might have let the whole thing die if Danielle hadn't posted a highlight reel from the dinner. It had soft piano under it, a caption about choosing peace over chaos, and clips of her hugging friends, smiling through tears, and speaking with graceful restraint. The comments were exactly what she wanted, so strong, so elegant. Healing looks beautiful on you. Terrence appeared for less than a second in one frame, but what caught my eye wasn't him. It was a tiny timestamp sticker she forgot to crop from one slide. It showed the video draft had been saved in a project folder called New Beginnings almost 2 weeks before she asked me to separate. At first, I told myself not to overread it. Maybe she recycled a template. Maybe she made a folder early because she was planning content. But once doubt gets in, everything starts sounding different in your head. I went back through Danielle's page, then Terrence's, then the accounts of mutual friends who posted too freely and deleted too slowly. The first thing I found was small but strange. Terrence had posted brunch at Ponce City Market 10 days before a separation, and Danielle had left a white heart comment under it. The comment was gone now, but he had not deleted the notification screenshot from a repost story. It was still sitting there, forgotten and visible. That alone wasn't proof. Formers reconnect. People leave flirty emojis without crossing lines. But then I found Asha's birthday carousel from the same week. In one mirror near the back of a photo, Danielle stood beside a man wearing the exact same orange jacket Terrence had shown in another post that night. His face was turned, but the jacket pattern was too distinct to mistake. Danielle had told me she was homesick that evening and had ignored my calls. Suddenly, a boring little lie became a loaded one. This was where the whole situation shifted for me. It stopped being about humiliation and started becoming arithmetic. Dates, places, outfits, comments, timelines, overlap. The more I checked, the more the official story shrank. Danielle had framed Terrence at the dinner like somebody who had only reappeared after the separation, maybe as a supportive friend. But Terrence had posted a gym selfie from East Lake a full month earlier, and my apartment building was faintly reflected in the mirror behind him. Around that same time, I remembered hearing unfamiliar headlights outside before sunrise twice in 1 week. I had dismissed it as neighbors. Now the reflection gave those mornings a face. My stomach dropped and steadied. Suspicion was finally turning into paperwork, and paperwork is much harder to gaslight than feelings are, especially when someone has already been performing innocence. I opened my own calendar, old messages, and photo roll, and started comparing dates. The result was uglier than I expected. During the same weeks Danielle later described as lonely and unsupported, she had asked me to cover more bills because work stress was wrecking her finances. I paid our internet 1 month. I covered her car, note another. I bought groceries for 2 while she thanked me for being patient. Meanwhile, Terrence's posts from that period showed concert tickets, expensive dinners, and a cabin weekend in Blue Ridge. Either Danielle was going through hardship alone, or she was helping finance a quiet reunion while I paid the practical side of our life together. That realization changed everything in me. The cabin weekend gave me a detail I still remember like a slap. Terrence posted a sunrise over a lake with a caption about peace feeling different when it's deserved. Danielle posted a photo that same morning of a mug on a windowsill and wrote, "Needed this reset." She did not tag the location. Most people would have scrolled right past it. I froze because the mug was ours. It was from a matching set we bought at Target after moving into the apartment, and the handle had a tiny chip from when I dropped it unloading the dishwasher. She had taken a piece of our kitchen to a trip I wasn't supposed to know existed, then used it for aesthetics. By then, I had enough to embarrass her online, but I did nothing. Public people survive direct attacks all the time. They cry harder, change the framing, and make your anger look like proof of your instability. Danielle had already shown me her strategy. She loved mood, witnesses, and implication. So I decided not to hand her another stage. Instead, I kept gathering. I watched old reels, checked archive tag stories, and followed the kind of accidental breadcrumbs people leave when they think nobody is paying attention. Every new clue did the same thing. It shortened the timeline Danielle had sold until her story could no longer physically hold together without collapsing under its own contradictions and visible overlap. A week after the dinner, another clue found me by accident. A mutual friend named Jamila sent me a screenshot meant for someone else and apologized the second she realized what she'd done. It was from Danielle's close friend story, reposted by another girl, showing a bouquet on our kitchen counter with the caption, "Full circle, kind of love." I zoomed in so fast my fingers cramped. The vase was on the exact counter in our apartment, and in the corner of the frame, the microwave clock was visible. The timestamp put the flowers there 5 weeks before Danielle had officially asked for separation. Full circle, apparently, had started while I was still making grocery runs and paying utilities. That screenshot changed the way I felt more than any other clue. Up to that point, some part of me still wanted a misunderstanding, some technical explanation that sounded awful, but not deliberate. The flowers killed that. Danielle had not just moved on before leaving. She had been curating an audience for the move. The cryptic captions, the selective sadness, the closure dinner, Terrence in the front row, the cousins filming, the friends arranged around her like backup singers for a breakup hymn. It all belonged to one long performance. I stopped feeling rage and started feeling clarity. Clarity is colder than anger because it doesn't rush. It just waits until facts become heavier than a person's presentation. Then I found the Miami clip. Asha had uploaded a vlog recap from a girl's trip months earlier, and I only clicked because Danielle was in the thumbnail. Halfway through the video, during a quick room tour, the camera swung past a balcony. Terrence was there for less than a second, laughing into his phone in sunglasses and a white linen shirt. Danielle had told me that trip was women only, mostly spa appointments, room service, and sleep. I paused so hard the image blurred. This wasn't some late reconnection after a breakup. This was an overlap during the relationship, hiding in plain sight since summer, waiting for someone patient enough to compare the right details in the right order. That was when I understood why Danielle had kept her dinner speech so vague. Specific lies can be disproven. Emotional atmospheres are harder to challenge. She never said, Terrence only came back after the separation. She just staged him like a respectful witness to her healing and let people assume the timeline for her. That kind of manipulation is effective because it leans on implication, not statements, which meant my response could not be emotional. It had to be structural. I wasn't going to post a rant or accuse her in dramatic language. I was going to document sequence, dates, reflections, clothes, comments, deleted captions, and timestamps. Once people see order, performance starts looking fragile. So I built a file on my laptop called Timeline. No music, no paragraphs about betrayal, no insults, just screenshots labeled by date, each paired with a single line about what Danielle had claimed publicly during that period. August, girls' trip, Terrence visible on balcony. September, lonely relationship quote, same weekend cabin mug. October, payroll delayed, I cover bills, bouquet appears in our kitchen. November, separation requested. December, closure dinner, Terrence in front row, framed like supportive company after the fact. Stripped of mood and arranged in sequence. Her story looked less like heartbreak and more like a production schedule. I kept revising until it said everything without sounding emotional or messy. I almost sent the file that same night. But patience kept saving me from making this about pain instead of credibility. Danielle was still posting, and every post gave me fresh contrast. 2 days later, she shared a quote that said honesty feels expensive because few people can afford it. Terrence commented, proud of you, and she liked it almost immediately. That tiny exchange irritated people more than any accusation from me could have. Even the friends who had been praising her started sensing the smugness underneath the sadness. I realized I didn't need to force doubt into the room. I only needed to wait until the room was slightly uncomfortable on its own. Then the timeline would hit harder. The opening came from Danielle herself. She sent a polished message to our mutual group chat, thanking everyone for supporting her through a difficult transition and saying she hoped people would keep that same energy for accountability moving forward. It was sweet, measured, and sharp enough to remind everybody who had been cast as the lesson. That was my cue. I replied with one sentence. I stayed quiet at the dinner because I didn't have the full timeline yet, but now I do. Then I attached the file. No rant, no adjectives, no accusation, just sequence. The exact thing she had been depending on nobody assembling. Silence had protected her for weeks. Order was about to do the opposite. The chat didn't erupt right away, which somehow made it better. First there was typing, then silence, then one shocked emoji that got unsent. Jamila asked if the Miami frame was real. I sent the video timestamp. Asha said she had never noticed Terrence on the balcony. Somebody else asked why the bouquet was in our apartment before the separation. Danielle sent a voice note, then deleted it before anyone listened. That told me plenty. If she had a clean explanation, she would have wanted it heard immediately. Instead, Everybody sat inside the evidence, rereading dates, comparing details, and slowly realizing that the speech they'd applauded only worked because nobody had laid the pieces out in order. Danielle tried to recover an hour later. She said context was missing, healing journeys are messy, and I was weaponizing fragments because I couldn't accept the relationship ending. It was exactly the defense I expected, and it failed exactly the way I expected. My file barely contained interpretation. There was almost nothing emotional to argue with. Jamila pointed out that the New Beginnings folder predated our separation. Asha admitted Terrence had been around earlier than Danielle implied. Deshawn asked why closure needed cameras if the goal was peace. Once people started asking structural questions instead of empathic ones, Danielle lost her advantage. Performance can survive sympathy. It cannot survive follow-up from people who suddenly feel tricked by what they rewarded. By midnight, Danielle had deleted the highlight reel from the dinner, removed 2 honesty quotes, and limited comments on her page. Terrence deleted the brunch post, changed his Miami cover photo, and stopped commenting for almost a week. None of it helped. Deleting things after a timeline appears only proves the timeline mattered. The next morning, one of Danielle's cousins texted me privately to apologize for filming the dinner. She said she honestly believed Danielle was finally getting free from something harmful and felt sick realizing she had helped stage a lie. That apology mattered more than any argument could have. Danielle didn't just lose control of the story. She lost control of the witnesses she had carefully turned into props. That was the cruelest part, and it happened without shouting. People realized Danielle had not merely lied to me. She had used them. Friends who'd praised her grace now had to sit with how eagerly they rewarded performance over proof. That embarrassment spread fast. Invitations shifted. The brunch crowd that had nearly crowned her after the closure dinner went quiet for weeks. A girls' night she was planning got postponed with no new date. Jamila unfollowed Terrence first, then Danielle. Asha stopped reposting her captions. Nobody made a speech about switching sides. They just withdrew attention. Watching that happen taught me something sharp. Many people can survive being wrong, but very few can survive becoming unbelievable to their favorite audience. Danielle texted me privately after that and accused me of humiliating her on purpose. She said I could have talked to her directly instead of making mutual friends judge her. I read the message twice, almost impressed by the nerve. The woman who staged a public closure dinner with cameras and an X in the front row was now upset that public opinion had shifted against her. I answered with the calmest sentence I could find. You already made it public. I only corrected the order. She didn't respond for hours. Then she sent a paragraph about betrayal, boundaries, and how pain makes people petty. I never answered. Nothing frustrates a collapsing performance like indifference from the person it tried to weaken. A few days later, one last discovery landed in my lap without effort. Our landlord emailed me about move-out logistics and accidentally included a forwarded message Danielle had sent months earlier to the wrong address while asking about lease timing. Most of the thread was boring, but one line froze me. She wrote that she needed flexibility because my timeline with T might accelerate sooner than expected. T, months before our separation was even official. During the same period, she was telling me she felt confused and needed space to think. I didn't even use the email. By then, the story was already broken beyond repair. Extra proof would have felt less like justice and more like decoration on something already finished. What surprised me most was how differently people started reading my silence after the timeline dropped. Before that, I was the quiet man at the dinner, the blank screen they projected guilt onto. Afterward, the same silence looked like discipline. Deshawn told me something I'll probably remember forever. You didn't expose her, man. You just stopped helping her edit. That was exactly right. I had not built a smear campaign. I had removed her control over sequence. Once the event stood in daylight, she had to live inside the version she had spent months trying to outrun with lighting, witnesses, and sad language. The truth didn't beat her because it was louder. It beat her because it was cleaner. Not everyone cut Danielle off completely. A few people still said relationships are complicated and outsiders never know the full story. They were right in general and wrong in this specific case. Complexity does not rearrange timestamps. Nuance does not put bouquets in a shared kitchen 5 weeks early. Emotional pain does not place Terrence on a Miami balcony during a women-only trip. The strength of the evidence was that it wasn't theatrical. No single detail looked explosive by itself. But together, they removed every soft corner she had hidden behind. Some people stayed politely neutral, but the standing ovation was gone, and that was the thing Danielle never recovered from. She could not survive losing credibility with her chosen audience. The final twist came at Asha's New Year's brunch. Months earlier, that same circle had watched Danielle narrate our separation like a polished speaker. This time, when she walked in, conversations didn't stop dramatically. They just thinned. Nobody confronted her. Nobody needed to. She sat down, checked her phone too often, laughed too loudly, and tried steering the conversation toward vague lessons about private healing. Nobody followed. Jamila asked about work. Deshawn started a story about missing a flight. Asha kept passing plates and changing subjects. Danielle had wanted an audience more than anything. What she got instead was room tone, indifference, and the coldest consequence of all. Nobody cared enough to be impressed anymore. On her way out, Danielle paused by my chair and said quietly, "You could have just hated me in peace." I looked at her and finally understood what really bothered her. Hatred would have kept this story emotional, mutual, dramatic. It would have let her say we were both messy. What I gave her instead was sequence. Sequence doesn't scream, chase, or beg. It just arranges facts and lets a polished lie lose balance under its own weight. That was the revenge. Not ruining her life. Not yelling in public. Not making a scene. Just destroying the version of herself she had worked hardest to stage. Danielle thought I lost because I stayed quiet. I was just waiting. If you enjoyed this story, show a little love by liking this video and subscribing. See you in the next one.